Still taking the bus? Cousin mocked. Dad froze, staring at my wrist. That's a $2 million limited edition. I smiled. Oh, this old thing? The annual Chin family dinner was in full swing at Golden Palace, the same overpriced Chinese restaurant where we'd gathered every year since I could remember. Uncles bragged about their new Mercedes anti-compared designer handbags, and my cousins, while they were experts at making sure everyone knew exactly how successful they were. Michael, Cousin Kevin called out across the lazy Susan, his voice carrying that perfect mix of concern and condescension. Still taking the bus? Thus, I could recommend some good lease options. I adjusted the cuff of my simple white shirt, briefly revealing the watch underneath. The bus works fine. So practical, Aunt Linda chimed in. Though surely with your computer job you could afford something better? I bit back a smile. My computer job, as they called my tech company, was the reason I was wearing a watch worth more than everything else in this restaurant combined. Not that any of them would recognize a Philippe Dufour-Grandet's sonnerie minute repeater. Only 16 were ever made, and most collectors didn't even know who owned them all. Speaking of jobs, Uncle Richard boomed. Kevin just made junior partner at Goldman, following in his father's footsteps. The table erupted in congratulations. Kevin prined, adjusting his Rolex, probably his bonus gift and definitely not as rare as he thought it was. And what about you, Michael? My father asked, his eyes carrying that familiar disappointment. Still doing your, what do you call it? App development. Before I could answer, the waiter arrived with more dishes. As I reached for the soy sauce, my sleeve rode up again. This time Dad's eyes caught the movement and the watch. His chopsticks clattered to the table. That's, he stammered, face draining of color. That's impossible. The table fell silent. Dad had been a watch collector for decades before the market crash forced him to sell his collection. He knew exactly what was on my wrist. Is something wrong? Mom asked, looking between us. That watch, Dad's voice was barely a whisper. It's a Dufour-Grandet sonnerie. There are only 16 in the world. It's worth $2 million. Kevin finished, his Goldman Sachs trained, I finally recognizing what he was seeing. Give or take, depending on the market. The silence that followed was delicious. Aunt Linda's designer bag suddenly looked very cheap. Uncle Richard's Mercedes seemed decidedly middle class. Oh, this old thing? I smiled, deliberately echoing the phrase Aunt Linda had used earlier about her Gucci bag. Just something I picked up at auction last month. But how? Mom sputtered. You take the bus. I took a sip of tea, enjoying the moment. Ever wonder why I take the bus? It's because I'm usually on calls with our Tokyo office. Can't do that while driving. Tokyo office? Kevin's smirk had vanished. What exactly does your app do? I pulled out my phone, not the latest iPhone which had made them snicker earlier, and pulled up our company's latest valuation report. We develop AI-driven financial trading algorithms, I said, sliding the phone toward Kevin. Actually, we probably power some of the systems you use at Goldman. His eyes widened as he read. Uncle Richard leaned over his shoulder, then made a choking sound. 10 billion, he wheezed. 11.2 after last month's funding round, I correct it. Though valuations can be so volatile, can't they, Kevin? The fancy watch on his wrist suddenly looked very small. Dad was still staring at my Dufour. His expression, a mix of recognition and regret. He'd been the one who taught me about watches, about their history and craftsmanship. Before he'd lost everything and decided that traditional banking was the only safe career path. The auction, he said quietly. Christus, last month. I nodded. Anonymous buyer. I knew you'd recognize it eventually. It was your father's dream piece, Mom said softly. Before. I know, I replied. Why do you think I bought it? The rest of dinner was awkwardly quiet, punctuated only by the occasional clink of chopsticks and muted requests to pass dishes. My cousins, usually so vocal about their achievements, seemed to have collectively lost their voices. Even Kevin stopped mentioning Goldman Sachs. So, Uncle Richard finally broke the silence. This company of yours, it's quite successful then. I checked my phone, another notification from our London office. You could say that. We process about 30% of all AI-driven trades in Asia, probably closer to 40% after next month's merger. Merger. Kevin perked up, his investment banker instincts kicking in. With whom? Can't say yet, I smiled. But you'll probably read about it in the Financial Times soon enough. Your firm is handling part of the due diligence, actually. Kevin's face went pale. The quantum trade acquisition? That's your company? Dad's head snapped up. Quantum Trade? The Singapore-based firm that's revolutionizing Asian markets. Among other things, I said, deliberately vague. The NDA wouldn't lift for another week. Aunt Linda leaned forward, her earlier disdain replaced with intense interest. But Michael, darling, why didn't you tell us? All this time we thought that I was struggling, taking the bus because I couldn't afford a car. I adjusted my watch again, letting the light catch its perfectly crafted complications. Sometimes success doesn't need to be advertised. Speaking of advertising, Uncle Richard cut in. My investment portfolio could use some diversification. Perhaps we could discuss. Sorry, I interrupted politely. We're fully funded. Last round was oversubscribed by about $3 billion. The table fell silent again. $3 billion in oversubscription was more money than all their portfolios combined. Mom touched my sleeve gently. But son, why keep it secret? All these years. Because I wanted to build something real, I replied. Not just chase data symbols and family approval. Dad was still staring at the watch. The auction, he said suddenly. There was a bidding war. The price went way above estimates. I know, I smiled. I was the other bidder. But there were two. His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. You drove up the price deliberately. Had to make sure no one else got it. I shrugged. It was your dream watch, Dad. I wasn't going to let it slip away. Kevin, trying to salvage some dignity, cleared his throat. Well, at Goldman, we always say. Actually, I cut him off, checking my phone again. Your trading desk just switched to our new algorithm platform. The memo should go out Monday. He deflated completely, his junior partner status suddenly seeming far less impressive. Aunt Linda, ever the social navigator, tried a different approach. Michael, you must come to our country club next weekend. There's someone I'd love you to meet. Can't, I said, flying to Singapore on my jet. Board meeting? Your jet. Uncle Richard's voice was faint. Just a small one, I replied modestly, though I usually take the bus to the airport. Better for the environment, you know. After dinner, Dad followed me outside while the others were still gathering their designer coats and luxury car keys. The night air was crisp and I could see his breath as he struggled to find words. That watch, he finally managed. It was the one in my study. The picture I kept on my desk. For 20 years, I nodded. Right up until the crash forced you to sell your collection. He winced at the memory. 2008 had hit our family hard, transforming him from a respected collector into someone who pushed his children towards safe careers in banking and finance. Is that why you bought it? He asked quietly. To prove something, I pulled back my sleeve, letting him really see the timepiece. The moon phase complication caught the streetlight. It's perfect craftsmanship, a testament to dreams that transcend mere wealth. I bought it because every time I visited your study as a kid, you'd tell me about this watch. About how only 16 people in the world would ever own it. About how it represented the peak of human craftsmanship. His eyes misted slightly. I remember. When I started my company, I kept a picture of it too. Not to remind me about money or status, but about precision. About building something perfect, something rare. Just then, Kevin and Uncle Richard burst out of the restaurant, both talking rapidly into their phones, probably calling their brokers to research my company. Aunt Linda was not so subtly showing Mom pictures of her friend's daughter on her phone. Here, I said, starting to unbuckle the watch. It was always meant to be yours. Dad stepped back, shaking his head. I can't. It's too much. Actually, I smiled. I bought two at the auction. This one's yours. Mine's in Singapore. I figured one masterpiece per continent was reasonable. His hands shook as I handed him the watch. Two, but that's $4 million? I shrugged. About what I make in interest each month. Besides, some things are worth more than money. Mom came over, still clutching Aunt Linda's phone. Michael, dear, about this lovely girl. Sorry, Mom. I checked my actual phone, the non-fancy one that ran our secure company apps. But I'm already seeing someone. She's the head of AI research at MIT. We met at a conference where I was the keynote speaker. Various relatives within earshot nearly gave themselves whiplash turning to stare. You know, Dad said softly, admiring his watch. I always wondered why you worked so hard on those computers instead of following Kevin into banking. Remember what you used to say about this watch? That it was valuable not because of its price, but because it represented someone's relentless pursuit of perfection. He nodded. That's what I built, I said. Not just another trading company, but something precise, something rare, something that changes the way the whole industry works. My phone buzzed again. The Singapore exchange was opening soon. Dad noticed and smiled. You should go, he said. Markets wait for no one. Actually, I pulled out 2 tickets. Why don't you and Mom come to Singapore next week? See what your son actually built. First class, of course. On your jet. Mom asked weakly. No, I grinned. On the bus. Just kidding, yes, on my jet. As we said our goodbyes, I heard Kevin explaining to Uncle Richard why making junior partner at Goldman wasn't really that important in the grand scheme of things. Aunt Linda was suddenly very interested in tech stocks, and my other cousins were frantically Googling my company. But none of that mattered as much as watching Dad show Mom his new watch, explaining its complications with the same passion I remembered from childhood. Some things are worth more than money. Like the look on your father's face when he realizes his son didn't just succeed, but succeeded while staying true to the values he taught him. I took the bus home that night as usual. But this time I spent the ride looking at pictures of Dad's old watch collection, planning how to slowly rebuild it one masterpiece at a time. Sometimes the best revenge isn't showing off your wealth. It's using it to restore what really matters. And sometimes taking the bus doesn't mean you're broke. It means you're too busy building an empire to worry about what other people think of your ride.